Hey guys, well, let's talk about the Packers 22-0 shutout of the Buffalo Bills. Do some stats, impressions, general thoughts, and the power rankings came out today. It's Tuesday. This is the Out of Breath Armstrong Packer Minute, the show where I walk around the neighborhood talking about the Packers, and you watch to see if I get swept away by a tornado. And general thoughts on this game have been mixed. If we had been able to have a second offensive half like we had a first one, I think there would have been a lot of positivity. As it stands, once again, the Packers going out and kicking field goals for an entire half of football after coming out and once again failing to score a touchdown, which I was convinced they were going to do on their opening drive of the game, opening offensive drive of the game. I like this team deferring when they win the toss. I thought we were going to put it in the end zone this time around. I thought we should have put it in the end zone. But generally speaking, this is an offense that just does not seem to be the most focused. And for all of Mike McCarthy's attempts to up-tempo the second half, keep the foot on the gas, a few play calls that were sort of foot-on-the-gas play calls, and then other ones that just were not and were frustrating. So we saw the frustration is not Packer Nation's alone. Aaron Rodgers steps behind the podium and was very negatively critical about the offense. Said it was a terrible performance. And we as Packer fans, if you've watched the game, can agree basically. Yeah, we won the game. We shut them out, but we didn't dominate. This should have been a dominant performance. And defensively it was. We shut them out, but we didn't blow them out. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. We shut them out. We should have blown them out. The Bears had a blowout. That's why they're ranked number 8 on Elliott Harrison's power rankings, and we're ranked number 9 right now, guys. We're barely in the top 10. This is an offense that should be scoring 30 points a game. May need to now playing against the Lions. On the slate, on the docket this week, then, of course, we go to Detroit. That's not an easy row to hoe, ever, for the Green Bay Packers. We always struggle. We always have our share of struggles. Bears are on their bye week now. A little earlier bye week than us. Ours is week 7, right before the Rams game, which I think is perfect. Almost dead center. But before that Rams game, even if it's a week earlier of mid-season, it's right before that Rams game. I think that helps us a great deal. We know Mike McCarthy usually is pretty good coming back off the bye. And then we also know that when week 17 rolls around and the Bears have to play the Minnesota Vikings in a game that may very well have a lot of meaning at that time, those Bears will have a little more tread off their tires than a Packers team who has to play Detroit. So down the road, all isn't certainly not lost. 2-1-1 now. We're ahead of the Vikings with their loss to the Rams. And with the opportunity to play the Rams, we have a chance to take advantage of that as well. Of course, the Bears look like the cream of the crop in the NFC North right now. However, what you may not know, let's talk about some league leaders right now and some Pro Football Focus grades. And relatively speaking, I think these are pretty solid numbers because Pro Football Focus, at least they pay attention to they parse out each play for each player and they put them against a standard that's much more objective. I know that there are criticisms out there. If I was a player, I'm sure I could find responsibility criticisms where, because you don't hear Pro Football Focus people talk too much about and explain exactly what every responsibility is on the field because frankly, it's not always easy to tell. However, I think the criticism often comes from people that, don't do any objective researching or pay any attention. They just like to criticize Pro Football Focus. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But relatively speaking, guys, it's been interesting. There's a couple guys that are jumping off the board right now. One of those, surprise, surprise, is Clinton Dix, tied in a 4-way tie right now with the league lead in interceptions right now with his 3rd in a row. Clinton Dix scored out at a 90.6 in this game. Had a very good game. Whereas last week, he looked a little flat-footed, a little bit hesitant. This defense overall stepped up. And again, it's encouraging when they step up without Mo Wilkerson available, as he's now on IR. So Dean Lowry was in there with a 75.6. Jermaine Whitehead, of all people, Scored a 78.5, graded out at 78.5, had a good game. We started to get better safety play. I talked to you about Blake Martinez, then in the middle at 81.4. 90.6. That's an excellent grade. Of course, the interception is going to help that out. And that was a fantastic pick, by the way. He got to the ball first, then made contact with the receiver, so there's no penalty. That's not as easy as it looks. And then he made the catch as well. Wasn't just a pass breakup. Went ahead and got the interception. And put Kelvin Benjamin on his butt while he was at it. I like that too. Guess who scored the top defensive grade from Pro Football Focus for the Green Bay Packers? That would be none other than Kenny Clark. 92.0, which is fantastic. Let me put that in perspective. One Khalil Mack scored a 90.9 this week. And we know what kind of a dominant force he is. Now, that might be comparing apples to oranges to some extent because Kenny Clark's an interior defensive lineman and Khalil Mack is an edge rusher. So in terms of impact, in some regards, Khalil Mack is going to have a bigger impact. But we've talked a lot about interior pressure and how it gives quarterbacks bad days. And that's exactly what we saw out of Josh Allen. We were flipping around like a rag doll. He looked discombobulated. His passes were terrible. Accuracy was kind of his bugaboo in the first place, and we just made it that much worse. A really fantastic defensive performance. Generally speaking, you can talk about Clinton Dix, Kenny Clark. This was a little unexpected because I wasn't sure quite what to expect from this defense after last week and some of the hesitation that we've seen. But this was a concerted team defensive effort. I mean, gosh, who would have said, if you said somebody was going to have 3 sacks in this game, raise your hand if you would have immediately said Kyler Fackrell. This was exactly what we had been hoping from Mike Pettine's defensive scheme. And yes, we were up against a rookie quarterback with very little experience. However, this team, the scheme began to help us. You could see it where we had a free runner on better than 50% of the plays. I mean, we had a free runner consistently all afternoon in this game. That's exactly what that scheme can do for you. Again, it still has to be executed properly. The execution was on point in this game. Wrapping up good form tackles. And then you've got to factor into this particular game with the 7 sacks that we had. You know, the fact, as much as I kind of hated what these refs did out there, the one thing they did is they quit throwing the flag on the fluffing the passer crap that we've been seeing for 2 weeks in a row. Week 1, yeah, Clay Matthews deserved it. That was just a dumb play. But the other 2, bogus calls. Defense truly coming around. And, you know, they need to show consistency. We need to do this against better quarterbacks too, guys. Detroit and Matt Stafford is going to be a completely different story. And again, this was an uncommon opponent. We had a bit of an advantage there, even though I suspect the Buffalo Bills were a little more familiar with Pettine's scheme in general with his time in the AFC. But again, we're going to have to stack successes. And mainly, I think we need to get this offense like laser focused at this point. Now, we talked about this past week, Aaron Rodgers able to go out for the Thursday practice, and he was saying, you know, he's going to see how it feels this week. So he looked good, and the more practice he can get, I think the better off it will be for an offense that has every reason. It's a high-powered offense on paper right now. And Aaron Rodgers himself has said this is going to be a work in progress. It's going to take some time. I've talked several times about how the tight end position in particular, working into our offense usually takes some time. So we will continue in just a moment talking about this offense. I know there's some consternation out there over the performances that we've seen out of these guys. We'll chat about it in just a few minutes, guys. Talk to you again soon. So what is wrong with this offense? Our total defense, and again, you know my thoughts on total defense, but total defense after this week, jumped to 6th in the league. Our total offense right now is 17th. Again, this is the opposite of what we would have expected out of this team. Young defense, new defensive coordinator, a lot of question marks. Lost Mo Wilkerson, more question marks. Offense, on the other hand, Philbin is back. McCarthy's still there. Aaron Rodgers intact. Major injury being Randall Cobb right now. And of course, Justin McCray. But I got to give props to Byron Bell, who played a very good game. Not perfect. We had a couple of free runners in this game that got really good shots on Aaron Rodgers. So not perfect, but much better than the debacle I was bracing myself for. I know you feel the same. I'm going to say, guys, this offense, the wide receivers seem to be losing focus from time to time. But I'm going to hazard a guess that this offense starts to hit its stride exactly at the time when Aaron Rodgers gets back to practice regularly. He did have the one long day last Thursday, but he's been a little bit off. And that time, those reps, not just getting back together with Devontae Adams, Randall Cobb, Gmo stepping up. He's taking a lot more reps than we're used to now, especially with Randall Cobb being injured. And then Jimmy Graham, of course. We saw Mercedes Lewis out there for a couple snaps this time around. And I really think as soon as Aaron Rodgers gets back to practicing on a regular basis, they talked about the uptick in practice and the focus that was there that hadn't been present when he was with the rehab group. So it does seem that Aaron Rodgers is getting on top of this injury slowly but surely. It's still a long stretch till the bye, I would say, if he's going to try to make it by then. But if he can make it to the bye and we can keep winning games, I think he's going to be feeling fantastic coming back for that LA game, going back to California to play in the sun down there. But him getting back to more practice, I think, is very important. And again, we talked about it. There was, to some extent, some of the subtext of Aaron Rodgers' press conference seemed to indicate that he was a little upset with the scheme, that maybe, and he wants to keep his foot on the gas, and that maybe he felt like we didn't do that. You could tell there were some give-up plays in there that you called them just like we were calling them. A little underneath pass. And rather than throwing to 2 yards ahead of the sticks and expecting a wide receiver to be able to pick up a couple of yards, I can understand that on 3rd and long. But throwing 2 yards beyond the line of scrimmage or handing off, this is the stuff that I think we've seen enough of to some extent. Especially when reports out of the locker room was that, McCarthy wanted to keep his foot on the gas. And there were, like I said before, there were times when we did have a little more aggressive play calling than I would have expected. And I think we even went for it on a 4th down in there. But yeah, it was interesting to me. I looked across the board in the NFL, and most of the teams that won, quite a majority of the teams that won, did their scoring in that second quarter, just like the Packers. And then were held. Obviously, at the half, you have defensive adjustments that come into play, but there are offensive adjustments too. You should be anticipating some defensive adjustments. But at any rate, it was interesting to me that, most of the league's winners, this week anyway, did their scoring in the second quarter, did the bulk of their scoring in the second quarter being the highest scoring. So, what you're looking at, probably depending on where the coin toss goes, is you're limited. It would be interesting to see how many possessions available in the first quarter. But a lot of times, you have that scripted set, and maybe defenses are being more successful against that than they have been in the past. But then you kind of settle into your groove in quarter number 2, generally speaking. Quarterbacks tend to dial things in. You get in a little bit of a rhythm, and then the half comes around. But to me, if we want to be a championship team, we are going to have to come out after half, anticipate some of the adjustments that the defense is going to make. And you've got to be trying to think ahead of that anyway. And play 4 quarters of Packers offense for a change. This is what we called for at halftime. There were hundreds of us saying, keep your foot on the gas. Don't back off in the second quarter. We need to get points on the board. We need to get in the end zone. We've got the guys to do it. Randall Cobb or no Randall Cobb, we got plenty of guys to do it. Valdez-Scantling looked pretty good out there too. But he also had a drop, I think, in this one. Gmo probably had 3 or 4. But we'll get it dialed in. The one thing I am glad to see, if you look at a game like this was an opportunity game because of the Vikings loss in particular. And we go out there and we have a great defensive performance. I've got to feel like the offense at some point is going to come around, is going to click. I think it will happen when Aaron Rodgers starts to feel better and get back to practice and be out there and not be missing. I mean, we've seen a couple weeks in a row him just slightly overthrow touchdown passes, and I'll expect that to go away. And this is a team that historically is able to dial it in December when we need to and get focused from time to time. I'm very happy that Aaron Rodgers is unhappy, that he is not okay with this. Mike McCarthy, I think Mike McCarthy was happy to get a win, to see the defense perform like this. And he said this, when I close the door and review the film, there's a lot that we left on the field. And offensively, we just left too much on the field. Too many drop balls, too many overthrows, misthrown passes. We got the tip ball, the interception that comes off a tipped ball. Some of it's just crazy stuff. We did have, Jimmy Graham and Devontae Adams in exactly the same area during that play, and I didn't get a chance to review that play and try to parse out exactly what was going on, but you saw the look on Jimmy Graham's face. Almost as if he thought that was for Adams, or he realized that he was in the wrong spot. It's hard to tell without reviewing it in slow-mo. But I do think the offense is going to get on track. I just don't see... And then you've got to have the positive on the offense. You got to talk about how meaningful the run game was in this game. And Jones, again, performing. Jones with 11 carries. Williams with 11 carries. Montgomery only had the 5, but then we know he's also, versatile. He's catching out of the backfield. So a very meaningful game for our running game. And I believe McCarthy's absolutely right. And he put his finger on it, how important it is to be able to run the ball in December at Lambeau. This is a team, again, we haven't talked about it this season because we're coming off the Aaron Rodgers injury season. That last year the talk was, we need to not just be playing for the playoffs. This is a team that really could use some home field advantage in the playoffs, or at least a home game like we had against the Giants in the wild card round a few years ago. So I still believe in the offense. I had the sense that McCarthy was trying to go outside of his normal and then just click back to his normal MO a little too much. Detroit, even with Matt Patricia, the new head coach, they're going to... that team knows us pretty well. This is a good defense, again, that we're going up against. Slay is one of the top-rated cornerbacks right now. I've heard people poo-poo the Detroit defense. Think again, this is a good defensive backfield right now. And Patricia did say this week he's not planning to give Kerryon Johnson any more carries. Between him and LeGarrette Blount, he thinks the balance is right where he wants it to be. I'm not buying it. I think Kerryon Johnson is going to have more carries in this game. I think they're going to want to control the clock. And Blount will probably, I'm sure will still be out there. He'll get his carries, but I'm expecting him to be more the third and short, and Johnson to actually get a few more carries. And another dangerous running back. So he's by far their best running back right now. And they haven't had a running game for a long time. You give Matt Stafford a running game. We've talked about this with Aaron Rodgers. You give Matt Stafford a running game, and things can get pretty difficult. You can be on the horns of a dilemma pretty quick. They're bottom of the division right now. They're a team that we should beat. But again, this is at Detroit. It's not going to be any walk in the park. So, as offense goes out there and plays 4 quarters of football, Mason Crosby keeps kicking the way he does. We had the snafu with the extra point, which kind of blew my mind. But then he comes back and kicks a 52-yarder, no problem. So Mason money still out there. But, in years past, we didn't call upon Mason Crosby that often because we were getting in the end zone. Let's call on him for points after for a change, especially in the second half. I think it's going to happen. I think this week, even though we had, like I said, it was a shutout, but it wasn't a blowout. And I think that there's some good that can come of that, because had we scored 40 points like the Bears did, there's perhaps a sense of complacency that might creep in, little overconfidence. And I do agree with Mike McCarthy that really the hardest thing to deal with is when you have the success. And the Packers defense had success. They need to stack success against a better team. And then the offense kind of feels like they have yet to put together 4 quarters of football. They're playing half by half. And, we've ended up with 1 loss and a tie playing that way. It's about time for that to end. And this Packers offense to start out scoring some opponents. So we'll see what happens. Interested in your comments, guys. We are putting together the order for the t-shirts. It's taken a long time, unfortunately. Apologize for that, but got to have the money to send those things out. So just taking a little longer to gather it up than we thought. And but I will be back soon, and the Packers will be on to another big-time game, back to the NFC North against the Lions. We'll talk to you again soon. Go Pack.
Packer Nation worldwide.